Marcus Aurelius, ruler of the most powerful empire on earth, wrote a confession in his private journal that almost no emperor would dare admit. He wrote about the temptation to stay in bed. He described the pull of warmth, of comfort, of just a few more minutes beneath the covers. And then he asked himself a question so sharp it cuts across 2,000 years straight into your morning. What am I made for? Not what am I comfortable with? What am I made for? That distinction is everything. The Stoics believed that laziness was not really about tiredness or weakness. It was about a failure of philosophy, a failure to know what you are and why you are here. Most people treat laziness as a character flaw, something to be ashamed of, something to white-knuckle your way through with willpower and self-disgust. But the Stoics saw it completely differently. They said laziness is what happens when a person has not yet answered the fundamental question of their own existence. When you do not know your purpose, rest feels indistinguishable from retreat. When you do not know your nature, inaction feels as reasonable as action. And so you stay in bed, you scroll, you delay. Not because you are broken, but because you have not yet done the deeper work of understanding what you are actually for. That is where this conversation begins. Not with a productivity hack, not with a morning routine checklist, but with a philosophical reckoning that the Stoics believed every serious person owed themselves. Stick with this, because what follows might reframe everything you thought you knew about your own so-called laziness. Epictetus, who had been born a slave and rose to become one of the most respected philosophers of the ancient world, taught his students something that sounds almost uncomfortable by modern standards. He said that a human being who is not doing the work they are fitted for is like a musician who never plays, a sculptor who never touches stone. The instrument exists but produces nothing. It does not become a better instrument through disuse. It decays. Nature, the Stoics observed constantly, does not idle without reason. The sun does not debate rising. The river does not negotiate with its banks. Trees do not pause in the middle of growing and decide to take an indefinite break from becoming what they are. And human beings, the Stoics argued, are part of nature. We are rational animals built for action, for contribution, for engagement with the world. When we resist that, when we choose comfortable stagnation over effortful purpose, we are not simply wasting an afternoon. We are working against our own nature. Seneca put it plainly. He said that the body must be treated more rigorously so that it may not be disobedient to the mind. What he meant is that the physical pull toward ease is real, but it is not sovereign. The mind is the captain, and a mind that has not been trained to lead will always be overruled by the body's preference for the path of least resistance. Epictetus went further. He reminded his students that we do not choose our circumstances at birth, but we always choose our response. Laziness is always a choice, even when it does not feel like one. That is a hard truth. But the Stoics were not in the business of comfortable lies. Seneca wrote one of the most devastating critiques of comfortable living ever put to paper. He described people who fill their days with busyness that amounts to nothing, who confuse being occupied with being alive, and who mistake the avoidance of discomfort for a form of wisdom. He called this kind of life a slow burial. You are present in body, but absent in purpose, and what makes this trap so dangerous is that it does not feel like a trap. It feels like relief. It feels like finally being allowed to exhale. Modern life has constructed an elaborate architecture of escape. Every device in your pocket is engineered to keep you in a state of frictionless distraction. The Stoics could not have imagined the specific mechanisms, but they absolutely understood the dynamic. Seneca warned that we should be especially suspicious of pleasures that cost us nothing in the short term, but everything in the long term. He was talking about wine and excess in his era. We are talking about screens and scrolling in hours. The principle is identical. Comfort, when it becomes the goal rather than the occasional reward, hollows a person out. Marcus Aurelius described this hollowing in military terms. He said that a soldier who refuses to train is not resting, he is losing. The body that does not move stiffens. The mind that is not challenged shrinks. The will that is never tested crumbles the moment it is finally needed. And the cruelest part of the comfortable trap is this: the longer you stay in it, the harder everything outside it looks. Action becomes foreign, effort becomes frightening. The gap between who you are and who you could be grows so wide that looking at it becomes painful, so you stop looking. The Stoics said that is exactly when you must look hardest. Marcus Aurelius did not believe in waiting for motivation. In the Meditations, he returned again and again to a single practical discipline. Begin. Not perfectly, not boldly, just begin. He wrote that you do not need much to live well, and he applied that same economy to action. You do not need ideal conditions. You do not need certainty. You do not need to feel ready. You need only to move. Epictetus reinforced this with his famous division between what is in our control and what is not. Motivation, as we tend to think of it, is largely not in our control. It is a feeling, and feelings fluctuate, but the decision to act is always within our control, always. This is one of the most liberating ideas in all of Stoic philosophy, and it is radically countercultural. We are told to follow our passion, to wait until we feel inspired, to pursue what lights us up. The Stoics would not dismiss joy or purpose, but they would say that anchoring your actions to your feelings is a catastrophically unstable strategy. Seneca framed it this way: begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life. Each morning is not a continuation of yesterday's failures or successes. It is a fresh jurisdiction, a new sovereign moment where you get to decide again, not feel your way into deciding, decide. The practical application is almost embarrassingly simple. The Stoics advocated for small, consistent, deliberate actions over heroic but unsustainable bursts. Marcus woke and served. Epictetus taught even when his body ached. Seneca wrote even when his lungs burned from illness. None of them waited, and none of them confused waiting with wisdom. Here is where the Stoic argument against laziness reaches its deepest level, and it is not about productivity or success or becoming your best self in the way that phrase gets thrown around today. It is about something older and more urgent. The Stoics believed that your life is your one unrepeatable contribution to the fabric of existence. Not your career, not your reputation, your actual life, the texture of how you spent your days, the quality of attention you brought, the effort you made or refused to make. Seneca wrote that it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. And the way he described that waste sounds like a description of laziness at its root. Not the tiredness of someone who is genuinely given everything, but the emptiness of someone who gave as little as possible and called it peace. That is the distinction that matters. Rest is sacred when it is the recovery of someone who has truly labored. Rest is a slow death when it is the permanent condition of someone who has never truly tried. Marcus Aurelius closed his journal entries not with declarations of triumph, but with quiet recommitments. Tomorrow I will try again. Tomorrow I'll be a little less indulgent with myself. Tomorrow I will remember what I am for. That is all the Stoics ever asked. Not perfection, not relentless grinding, just the honest, daily, renewable choice to show up for your one life as if it actually matters. Because it does. And somewhere in the part of you that watches yourself drift and delay and put things off until tomorrow, you already know that. The question is whether you will let that knowing change you. If this video moved something in you, do the Stoic thing right now. Act, like it, subscribe, and come back tomorrow, ready to go again.